Hi, I'm Michelle Williams, and today I'm going to talk about cancer-related fatigue from a patient's perspective. My first experience of cancer-related fatigue was about 4 months before I knew I had cancer. I'd had unexplained weight loss, tiredness, brain fog, joint pain, and just all-round ugh. At the time I was working flat out, probably working about 40 to 50 hours a week, and I knew I wasn't getting enough sleep, but this was just on another level. As I have lupus, which is an autoimmune disease, and I'm also menopausal, the symptoms were put down to both of those when I visited my GP. I ended up with a referral back to rheumatology because I dropped out of the system with that. While waiting for my appointment with the rheumatologist, I had a routine mammogram. I've had a number of them in the past over the years, and they've all turned out to be cysts where I'd found like a lump. So at this point I had no cause for concern. I received a recall letter a couple of weeks later, and I had felt a lump. Once I got the letter and I knew I was going back, I examined myself and knew I had a lump. So I assumed it would just be exactly like it was before, so I was not worried at all about the appointment. Me and my husband hadn't had a holiday in about 8 years, and we decided to jet off to Tenerife for a few days. We had a fantastic time and enjoyed watching the sun go down on our last evening there, and that's what you can see in the photograph here. I was blissfully unaware that I had breast cancer. We got home the next day, and the day after that was not only my husband's birthday, but it was my follow-up appointment. This was 3 days before Christmas. So 48 hours later, upon examination at the hospital, I heard the word dimple and suspicious, and I knew right away that it wasn't a cyst. It was all a bit of a blur. I had another mammogram that took biopsies, and although I'd mentioned that I had a bit of a reaction to local anaesthetic, they gave me some to reduce the pain, and I fainted. So I'd gone into the room all full of beans, anticipating having a cyst drain, and I came out almost being carried as I was recovering from what had just happened. My husband was really shocked at how I came out, being held up by a couple of nurses, and I just said, "They're sure it's breast cancer." And we just sat there in silence. After a short while, we were ushered in to speak to the nurse, and there she confirmed that it was highly likely to be breast cancer. It was about 20 millimetres, the lump that they'd found, and it would be confirmed by the biopsies, and then I'd get the results of those in the new year. Didn't really help having Christmas in between and New Year, and that put just a very short delay into the system. I told my close friends and family at this point, and I figured it made sense to wait to tell anybody else until so after I'd got the results after Christmas. It was a really difficult Christmas. It was the first Christmas without my dad, and he'd passed away at the beginning of the previous year after a short battle with lung cancer. So yeah, difficult time all round. They gave me some to reduce the pain, and I fainted. On New Year's Day, so this was my last day before I went back to the hospital. We had a lovely walk on Holy Island. The weather was beautiful, and it was the last day of things being normal. In my spare time, I do enjoy photography, and it was such a lovely day. And I just said, "They're sure it's breast cancer." When I went back to the hospital on the 2nd of January, the biopsies revealed that I had triple negative breast cancer, and it was also in my lymph nodes. Initially, I'd been told I would probably have the lump removed and some radiotherapy, so that was what I was anticipating. But at this time, because it's triple negative, which doesn't have any hormone involvement, who even knew there was more than one type of breast cancer? I was going to be having chemo first, then I was having surgery. It would be 9 to 10 months long, and this was on the premise that it hadn't spread beyond my breast and my lymph nodes. During the following 2 weeks, I had several scans and tests, and fortunately for me, it hadn't spread beyond my breast and my lymph nodes. So at that point, I was told that I would be having curative treatment, or that the aim was for curative treatment. In January, it was just a whirlwind of appointments, tests, scans, minor surgery, and the month ended with a haircut. You'll see from the photographs I had waist-length hair, and I had it cut and donated my hair to the Little Princess Trust, who make wigs for young people who've had cancer. And also I combined that with a fundraiser and raised about £3,500. The generosity of my friends and family and everybody was absolutely amazing. So at this point I was just on a conveyor belt, and there was certainly no time for fatigue at this point. Also, what I was doing during this time, I knew I was going to be off sick from work for probably a considerable amount of time. So I spent this month working as many hours as I could in between hospital appointments to try and make sure everything was in order for when I went off. Because the last thing I wanted was me to go off, people feel like they'd been landed in it because only Michelle knew what was going on with this, that and the other. So I put a lot of effort into making sure I had everything tied up with work. I started chemo. I had 12 weekly chemo sessions, and Wednesday was my chemo day. My husband would drop me off at the oncology unit. I'd spend maybe 4 to 5 hours there. He'd pick me up, take me home, where I'd spend the rest of the day sleeping on the settee, and the next few days would be a blur. I was usually feeling a little bit better by the Monday, and then back onto chemo by the Wednesday. Week after week, the side effects just ramped up, resulting in me having to have a reduced dose for the last 3 sessions. I did go on the sick from work on the first day of chemo, which was actually February last year, and this made me give myself permission to sort of rest or not get out of bed. So I knew that all the time that I had, and the reason I was off work was for me to be able to recover myself, look after myself, because at the end of the day work was still going to be there once I'd recovered. In May I went on to 3 weekly chemo, and this hit me a lot harder. Due to existing medications that I have for lupus, I couldn't have the anti-sickness drug that would normally be given for this treatment, and I ended up pretty ill in hospital. I found this a lot more challenging on both my body and my mental health. I had a scan at the end of my chemo, and this revealed a full radiological response, and that means that the chemo worked and it had basically disintegrated the tumour. I still had surgery to remove the tumour bed and also some of the lymph nodes. When I got the results back, there had been traces of cancer found in the lymph nodes that they removed, so I had a second surgery a few weeks later, which was called an axillary clearance, and they removed more lymph nodes. When they were biopsied after the surgery, there was no cancer found in those, so they actually had got it all the first time. So the second precautionary surgery was, I'm fine with that. I'd rather they did that than have a worry hanging over us, had they got it, was there any more. So last August, when I did have the surgery, at that point I became cancer free. Didn't feel like it because I still had a lot of work to go with further treatment. I had 5 days of radiotherapy, and then I had minor surgery to have my port removed, and then due to the fact that they'd found cancer in the first surgery and that I was triple negative, which is non-hormonal, they recommended that I have 6 cycles of chemo tablets. I kept a list of my appointments, and I found I'm like a right spreadsheet girl. I love my numbers, I love my facts. So I sat and put all the figures of my appointments into a spreadsheet. And from the day of the mammogram that detected the cancer to the last day of my tablet chemo cycles was 515 days. The last hospital appointment where I got my last cycle of chemo was actually appointment number 100. So unbeknown to me at the time, I hit that landmark. So if you think about 515 days and 100 appointments, that's on average an appointment every 5 days. But most hospitals don't tend to work normal on weekends. So if we look at working days, that's actually one appointment every 3.5 working days. You know, you wonder why people get tired or fatigued. The appointments though weren't always in the same place. I was under the breast care nurses at the RVI. I had my chemo treatment at North Tyneside Oncology Unit. I saw my oncologist at Wansbeck Hospital. I had surgery at both the RVI and the Freeman. I had my radiotherapy at the Freeman, and then I also had some unscheduled emergency visits to Cramlington Hospital. When you have chemo, you often get antihistamines which can make you drowsy. Some chemo contains alcohol which can have the same effect. And I just remember sat in the waiting room, just having had chemo, almost asleep. But at the time, my oncologist did apologise when she realised that I'd just had chemo that day, and that didn't happen again. The other thing which I found interesting is your resting heart rate. I wear a Fitbit, other devices are available, and I monitor my heart rate. I've had one for about 5 or 6 years. My heart rate's a little bit high because of a medication that I'm on anyway. But you'll see from the graph how much it rose between January, February, March and April. So I started chemo in February, and by April my resting heart rate rose from 82 up to 99 beats a minute. That means that even if I was just resting, my heart was having to beat an extra 17 times a minute. And I worked out it's over 24,500 times a day your heart has to beat. And if you think about like cancer-related fatigue or treatment-related fatigue, 24,500 times a day for your heart to have to beat in addition to what it normally does is quite horrific, really. You'll see that the graph dropped considerably down to August, September, and that was after I'd finished the chemo and when I was having the surgery. It went back up as I had radiotherapy, and then as I started the tablet chemo, it rose a little bit again. But thankfully, it's back to much more normal levels now. I think whether you're a professional or whether you're a person with lived experience, these will probably mean quite a lot to you. The main reason that I've told the story in so much detail with the pictures is to get an idea of the amount of activity that goes around, not just the physical symptoms of fatigue, but the mental effects of it. This is living with you on a daily basis, and most of the time people just see a happy face, tell you how well you look, you know, that you've got a lovely shaped head. Fatigue comes in so many forms, and I'm sure you can associate with a lot of these words. When I was initially diagnosed, there was so much to take in. I don't even remember fatigue being discussed much at appointments. At the point I was told I was going to have chemo and radiotherapy, I was told that that would be a side effect, but really it was just a word, you know, you'll probably get fatigue. At the point of diagnosis, being told much more though, I'm not sure I would have really appreciated that and took it in. I think it would have been great to have it brought up a little bit more once the treatment began. More than just a word, being told what it might look like, what it might feel like, and the measures that I could take to help manage it myself. Fatigue, I think, is different from being tired. When you're tired, you know that if you get some sleep, you'll feel a little bit better. But fatigue is there with you when you wake up, and it stays with you all day. A lack of energy, a feeling of mental and emotional and physical exhaustion. Some days I lie in bed, picturing in my head everything that I'll get up and do during that day. And I think the more I think through those things, the heavier my body becomes. It feels like it fills itself with concrete. And it's like, if I just got up and did those things, I probably would feel better. But thinking about them, I think, can actually make it worse than doing them. Having difficulty thinking, speaking, making decisions, feeling breathless, lightheaded, dizzy when you're doing next to nothing, and just having like no energy or stamina. When people think about, oh, I need to try and do something today, I think even just getting dressed could be that one thing that you can achieve that day. Getting dressed and finding your way from the bed to the settee, or sitting outside on a chair can be like really gratifying. As I was off sick from work, I gave myself permission to do what my body told us. If I needed to rest or sleep, then I did. I documented my journey, as you can probably tell, and my weekly goal was to let people know what was going on for me, and it also helped with a number of things. It meant that rather than have to respond to loads of different messages, I could do it in one go, and it was also something to look back on. But the main reason for me doing a lot of this was so that if I could help somebody else, someone who was newly diagnosed, or maybe someone who had a friend or a relative going through cancer treatment, it would be interesting for them to know what happened behind the scenes. Because usually if people are having like all the cancer treatments, like, or they're having chemo, surgery, radiotherapy, it's 3 words, and people think once that's over, they're better. When I started at the oncology unit, I got a gift box from Live Well with Cancer. I hadn't heard of the charity before. I knew there was a lot of support organisations around who did help people who were living with cancer. And the box was so thoughtfully put together with loads of goodies that would help me in a way, and it was such a lift. It was just such a nice gesture. There was information about self-care, and there was a leaflet about the organisation. So I had a look on the website, found out about their activities and support. They're all free for anyone who's impacted by a cancer diagnosis. So the week of my first chemo, my chemo was going to be a Wednesday. I went along to the Wellbeing Hub on the Monday just to find out a little bit more about what went on. I walked through the door, quite nervous, and I was greeted by Maureen, and she basically said, "Are you here for yoga?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm here really. So she ushered me upstairs and I took part in the first yoga session I've ever done. And oh, it was brilliant. Had a chat with Maureen afterwards. I had a few tears, and it was just so nice to be able to talk to someone away from the medical profession who like knew what was going on, understood things, and had some sort of great support and advice. So what I decided to do was stick with yoga. So all throughout my treatment, yoga's been amazing. Yoga was on a Monday, so it meant that I had chemo on the Wednesday, and by the Monday, my goal was to get to yoga. And if I made it along to yoga, it felt like I was getting back to doing something normal, and I had a free day on Tuesday to feel better and do what I want before I went back in on the Wednesday. It was great, but due to side effects that I had, it was quite challenging. But Michelle, who's the yoga tutor, she adapted the sessions and let me do whatever I felt I was up to doing. So some days, even if I just lay for 10 minutes while other people were doing stretches and exercises, that was totally fine. And every time I left the session and got back into the car to go home, I felt much better, more energised and restored from the yoga. And I would definitely recommend this to everyone, but it really, really helped with my routine. There's quite a lot involved with emotional well-being as well with fatigue. It can affect your feelings, and for me, talking through it helps. I go back to if I'm talking about what I'm going through can help one person, then that's a positive spin on things for me. I'm part of the breast cancer support group at Live Well with Cancer, and being able to speak to so many other ladies who've either been through it or they're like I was a year ago and just joining the group, it's so supportive and people like totally get it. And I think having the opportunity to talk to somebody who's maybe had the same type of cancer and what they've been through, and being able to say, is it normal, me feeling like this, doing this or whatever, it's just great. And also knowing that counselling is available here at Live Well with Cancer, should people need it, is just amazing. What else have I done to combat fatigue? Well, you might think that seeing my last 17 months and the photographs of how I've been, it's been doom and gloom. As hard as it is to try and combat fatigue, I've actually found that the more I do, when I'm feeling a little bit better, the better I feel. I've surrounded myself with love from friends and family, got out whenever I could. At first there was guilt. It was like, how can I post a picture of me going out for a coffee with someone when I'm off work sick? And it was like, I shouldn't be doing that. But then talking to some of my colleagues who I was missing from work said, no, we love seeing that you're able to do that because we know that you're feeling a bit better with what you're going through. Outdoors is my happy place. I mentioned before I love photography, and to be honest, I just spend as much time as I can sitting in the back garden just watching all the birds on the bird feeder, and we've got woodpeckers at the minute. It's fab. I don't do much formal exercise, although I have started doing Pilates at Live Well with Cancer, and also I'm going to join the movement group in a couple of weeks' time. My hubby and I go for a short walk every evening when most people are in bed, and even if it's just a walk around the block, it's something to get out. What advice would I give to someone? I think for me, you can't change what's happened. You can't control what the future will bring. So really it's about doing what you need to at exactly that point in time. Help yourself in the present. Remember what you're going through. Listen to your body, both physically and emotionally, and wherever you can, manage to do it. Enjoy nature and just be kind to yourself.